There was always one hallway that felt quieter than the rest. Elia walked it now, her steps light upon the waxed tile, where shadows drifted like faded cloth beneath flickering ceiling lights. Down here, time thinned. It floated somewhere between day and night, between now and then. A faint glow spilled from beneath a closed door ahead, and behind it, a baby's cry. Not frantic, not loud, just the sound of breath turning into need. Soft, persistent, tender. Elia paused, one hand resting gently on the doorknob. She knew this room. She had passed it earlier, when everything inside it had been still. The ward at night held its own kind of lullaby. The distant heartbeat of monitors, the slow rhythm of mothers exhaling in sleep, the faint flutter of cotton curtains stirred by vents above. Elia breathed it in, that strange mix of newness and nostalgia, the scent of warm linen, distant antiseptic, and the ghost of baby powder that lingered even when unused. She had worked these halls for nearly 20 years, long enough to know which cries meant hunger, which meant fear, and which was something else entirely. This one, it was neither. It sounded, searching. Inside, the light was dim. A lamp glowed beside the bassinet, and the mother, a young woman named Mira, lay on her side, unmoving, her eyes open but unfocused, fixed on the ceiling as if listening for something far away. The baby was swaddled nearby, cooing now. The cry faded to a soft whimper, as though reassured by the very presence of air and space. Elia moved slowly, as she always did, not out of caution, but reverence. She adjusted the blanket tucked around the infant, her fingers brushing over the tiny form like wind brushing tall grass. And then, she paused. It wasn't anything she could name, not a feature out of place, or a mark where there shouldn't be one. Just a flicker, a feeling, a tug at something behind the heart, soft but steady, like recognizing a melody in another room, or the shape of a dream you hadn't meant to remember. She stared just a little too long. The baby blinked up at her, not startled, not fussy, only calm, watching. Elia blinked back. She hadn't thought of her sister in years, not properly, not beyond the surface memories that rose like steam when you folded old laundry or passed a particular bush in bloom. Lyle had once stood in this very wing, clutching hope with trembling hands. The baby had been stillborn, they'd said, but Elia had never seen the body, only the way Lyle's face broke, like frost shattering in sunlight. Then gone. No funeral, no records, just a departure into silence. And now this child, that gaze, somewhere beyond the glass, rain had begun to fall. Not harsh, not hurried, just the kind that drifted downward like it was tired of being sky. Elia could smell it, that strange scent of earth and sky and coolness all at once. But layered underneath it, something else. Jasmine oil, faint floral, the kind their mother used to steep in warm cloth when they were sick. She could almost see her sister's hands again, reaching, brushing hair behind her ear, wrapping lullabies in gestures instead of words. The baby sighed, and Elia closed her eyes. A soft wind stirred the curtains. Somewhere, a clock ticked too slowly, and she thought, though she didn't know why, some cries echo longer than others. They're not always new. Sometimes they come back, waiting to be heard by the right ears. Elia opened her eyes and smiled, just a little, not because she understood what was happening, but because somehow she had been waiting too. Elia moved through the early hours like breath through lace, unseen but present, tender in her passing. The ward never truly slept. Babies stirred in half-dreams, monitors blinked in slow, glowing rhythms, and somewhere always was the faint, hushed voice of a mother soothing the world back into stillness. Elia didn't need a clock to know when the sky outside was lightening to gray. Her body carried time like a second heartbeat. She was the kind of woman who listened more than she spoke, who remembered what others forgot. And the hallway, that strange, quiet hallway, still felt different. There was a rhythm to her days. Check the bassinets. Fold the blankets with care. whisper greetings to new mothers before they opened their eyes, rest a hand on the small of a baby's back when the cries grew too lonely. Elia had never married, never moved away. Some people whispered that grief had left her hollow, but they misunderstood. She was not hollow. She was spacious, like a house with too many quiet rooms. Her life had not been loud, but it had been full of tiny hands, blinking eyes, and the soft weight of stories she never told. She hadn't spoken Lia's name aloud in years, not because she had forgotten it, but because it lingered in other things. In the scent of jasmine oil that still lived in the folds of her oldest sweater. In the way Elia always paused when she passed room 7B, even though it had long been repainted and renumbered. They had told Lila her baby was gone, stillborn. Nothing more could be done. And then, she left. No funeral, no belongings claimed, just a folded note and the feeling that something had gone terribly, inexplicably wrong. Elia never found her, but sometimes when she smelled lavender on the breeze, she looked up. She saw it in her memory again that morning. The willow tree from their childhood, all wild branches and dappled shade. They used to press their backs against its trunk and braid each other's hair with leaves. Lila would hum little nonsense songs while the wind danced through their socks on the grass. It was under that tree that Elia first learned how some things could be both soft and strong, like sisters, like sorrow. In the nursery's half-light, Elia often found herself humming. The songs had no names, no lyrics, just gentle melodies passed down in quiet kitchens, passed between women who held too much love and nowhere to place it. Tonight the baby girl in the corner bassinet stirred, just slightly, her little fists uncurled as Elia's voice slipped between beeps and shadows. Other nurses had long stopped noticing, but this baby listened. Her breathing slowed, her brow smoothed, her eyes remained open, curious. And Elia, though she did not say it aloud, felt the faintest pull, like a ribbon tying her to something older than grief. Mira remained by the window, arms wrapped around herself like she feared she might dissolve. She was beautiful in that distant way. Some flowers are lovely but unreachable, with petals that never opened fully. She had said little since giving birth. She would not hold the child, would not feed her, would not even ask her name, but she watched, as if trying to remember something she'd never learned. Elia brought her tea. Once, Mira didn't touch it, but her eyes followed the baby, and followed Elia too. The baby watched her. That was the only word Elia could find. Watched, not glanced, not stared with the blankness of the newly born. Her gaze was steady, quiet, ancient. It was absurd, Elia told herself. A trick of fatigue, perhaps. She hadn't slept properly in days, but something in the way that tiny child looked up at her, not with need, but recognition, made her breath catch, as though the child knew her, had waited for her, as though time could fold, and the past could return, not to haunt, but to be held. In the hush of early morning, while the sky outside turned pearl gray with promise, Elia sat beside the bassinet and gently rested her hand on the baby's back. She did not ask questions. She did not chase answers. Some things are not meant to be solved, only witnessed, only welcomed. Not all children are born once, she thought. Some return, not in body, but in need, not to the same mother, but to the one waiting just beyond the veil of memory. Elia opened her palm above the child's tiny fingers. The baby reached out, slow, unhurried, and wrapped her hand around Elia's index finger with quiet trust. No fanfare, no magic sparks, just warmth, contact. A moment too long to be ordinary. And in that touch, Elia did not feel clarity. She felt recognition, as though her skin remembered something her mind had forgotten. The weight of Lila's child, imagined for years, now real, here. Her eyes stung, but she did not cry. She only whispered, as the baby blinked sleepily up at her. Not all mothers are born when the child comes. Some are remembered into existence. It began with a smudge, not a dramatic error, not a glaring omission, just a single line in the baby's records where the ink had blurred, as if someone's hand had trembled. Elia sat in the nurse's office long after her shift, the pages fanned before her, like the petals of a wilted bloom. Paperwork in a hospital told stories few people ever read. It was full of names, numbers, initials, signatures, corrections. But beneath all that, it whispered, a file misfiled. A birth time that didn't match the delivery log. No one had signed the intake form, and the space for the mother's medical history was blank. Elia didn't panic. She just listened. The next morning, she found Mira by the nursery window again, her hands clasped like paper birds in her lap. I thought, Elia said softly, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeve, that we might try something. A simple test, just to be certain everything is as it should be. Mira didn't respond at first. Her gaze was fixed outside, where children's umbrellas bobbed across the street in the soft rain. Then she nodded once, not with worry, but with the air of someone saying yes to something they already expected. Elia smiled faintly, but her heart beat a little slower, the kind of rhythm it takes when it already knows the answer. The rain hadn't stopped in days. It fell in a fine curtain, catching on the hospital glass and pooling in the garden paths below. Mira sat with her back straight, her lips pressed into the softest frown, the kind grief wears when it no longer needs to speak. She still hadn't held the baby, hadn't asked about her feedings or her name, but every few hours, she would rise, walk to the nursery, and stare through the glass, just stare, as though waiting for the baby to notice her, or waiting for herself to feel something. Sometimes Elia watched her from down the hall, and sometimes the baby watched her too. It was strange how clearly some memories returned, not like scenes, but like weather, a change in the air, a forgotten scent curling under the skin. Elia could see Lila standing by a different window, 20 years ago, holding her belly and humming a song Elia never learned the name of. She could hear the hush of that same rain, see the nurse's pinched mouth when she delivered the news, the way Lila had pressed her palm flat against her own chest, as if trying to hold herself in, and then she was gone. Just gone. But Elia had never stopped listening, and now something was stirring again. Mira spoke that evening, the first full sentence in days. I see a garden gate, she said quietly, her voice not quite her own. Each time I close my eyes, it's green, with rust on the hinges. Someone's calling to me from the other side. Elia didn't interrupt. She only nodded, smoothing the baby's swaddle. But the name they use, Mira whispered, it isn't mine. Elia paused, then asked gently, do you answer? Mira shook her head. I don't think I'm supposed to. That night, an older woman walked the hallway, wrapped in a shawl the color of dusk. No one saw her arrive. No one signed her in. Elia caught her silhouette just as she left Mira's room. The woman paused briefly outside the nursery, her gaze resting on the baby. She's not lost, the woman said, almost to herself. Sometimes children find the mother who should have held them. Then she turned and disappeared around the corner. Later, Elia found a faint trace of lavender in the air, the same scent that clung to Lila's scarves, the same scent that always rose before Elia dreamed of her. 2 mornings later, Elia was changing the baby's blanket when she saw it, small, faint, tucked beneath the left shoulder, a birthmark, a smudge of skin no larger than a thumbprint, shaped almost like a falling star. Elia's breath hitched. Lila's baby had one too. She remembered tracing it with the edge of her finger when she held her niece, swaddled and still, for barely a minute before they took her away. It couldn't be the same. And yet, it couldn't not be. Elia didn't speak of it, not to the doctors, not to the other nurses. She simply moved slower that day, letting her fingers linger longer on the baby's cheek, whispering lullabies she hadn't sung in 20 years. She didn't believe in ghosts, But she did believe in love that never stopped waiting. And maybe that's all this was, the slow return of something left unfinished. She didn't know if this baby belonged to Mira, but she felt deep in her bones that she belonged somewhere, and that place might just be here. There are women who give birth, and there are women who remember love so fiercely, it brings life back through dreams. Elia watched Mira drift through the nursery that evening, her fingers ghosting over the glass, as if tracing someone else's story. Elia didn't judge her. Some people are not ready for the children who come. Some mothers aren't born until long after the child arrives. She whispered softly to the baby in her arms. It's all right. She's listening. She just doesn't know how to answer yet. That night, Elia cradled the baby on the old wooden bench near the east wing window. The rain had quieted, leaving pearls on the glass that shimmered like stars. The child sighed, not with hunger, but with knowing, as though she understood something Elia had only begun to grasp. Not all children are born once. Some arrive by memory, some by longing, and some by love that refused to forget. Elia smiled, pressing her lips to the baby's temple. I think you came back, she whispered, tears catching on her lashes because someone kept remembering. It arrived folded once, crisp and white, tucked without ceremony into her locker's corner like any other document, unassuming, sealed, complete. Elia took it in hand and stepped into the break room, where the vending machines blinked in the dim and the clock above the sink had long since stopped keeping time. She opened it slowly, not because she was afraid, but because something in her already knew. Mira, not the biological mother. The words didn't thunder. They didn't sting. They simply confirmed. Elia folded the page again, smoothing its edge once, twice. She closed her eyes and let the truth settle where it had been waiting all along, somewhere quiet inside her chest. The hallway shimmered with morning light, humming gently with the breath of a world still waking. Elia moved through it as though underwater, each step deliberate, each sound softened. The scent of warm milk and antiseptic hovered in the air, familiar and strange all at once. Nurses passed her with quiet nods. A cart squeaked in the distance, and still the rhythm of the corridor remained slow, dreamlike, as if the hospital itself were holding its breath. She passed the nursery and paused. Through the glass, the baby lay still in her crib, one hand resting gently against her cheek, as if listening to something only she could hear. Mira stood by the window, arms folded like wings not yet spread. She didn't turn when Elia approached, didn't need to. Their silence folded around them like a shawl. Outside, the rain tapped soft fingertips against the pane. Inside, only the distant coo of a waking infant marked the passing of time. Elia stood beside her. For a long while, they simply watched. No confrontation, no accusation, just two women, separated by pasts they hadn't chosen and bound by a child neither could name without trembling. At last, Elia spoke. Her voice was a thread in the hush, pulling neither tight nor loose, only true. This isn't your baby, she said softly, but I don't think she's lost. I think she found her way to us. Mira's jaw trembled. A long breath left her lungs, the kind that doesn't empty you but unearths. She nodded. Just once. I knew, she whispered. I just didn't know how to say it. Elia didn't reach for her, didn't touch her hand, but in that moment she held something far deeper. The fragile truth between them, laid bare and gentle. Mira's eyes stayed on the baby. I don't remember how I got here, she said. Not really. I remember rain, streetlights. I was outside this hospital holding her, and in my bag, adoption papers from a clinic in another city. She shook her head. They had my name on them, my address, my signature, but I'd never been there. I didn't know the child, not really, and still, I stayed. Elia waited. The rain traced little rivers across the glass. Something told me, Mira breathed, that maybe I wasn't meant to mother her. Maybe I was meant to carry her somewhere she belonged. Later that evening, Elia returned to her locker. The corridor had emptied, and the lights above flickered in soft pulses, like distant stars. She opened the metal door, and paused. There, at the bottom, rested a thick envelope tied in blue ribbon, the paper yellowed with age, the edges trembling like something that had waited too long. No note, no explanation, only a presence, as if the hallway itself had whispered a secret into her keeping. She sat at the nearest bench and untied the ribbon with careful fingers. Inside, a folder marked in old ink, pages typed, smudged, marked by hand, and on one a name she hadn't read in decades. Elia turned page after page, the story rising from silence like a song played backward. Hospital records, birth notes, postnatal forms, then a line item that stopped her heart. Declared stillborn, status, transferred, no certificate, no attending signature, just a word, one word, transferred. It wasn't a death, it wasn't an ending, it was a movement. Elia's breath hitched, her hand covered her mouth. She felt, not fear, not grief, but recognition, as though some part of her had been waiting for this word to arrive and open a door that never should have been closed. She stepped into the nursery, late. The world had grown quiet, folded under the blanket of night. The baby stirred as Elia reached for her, gently tucking a soft quilt around her shoulders, a familiar blanket, one she'd kept in storage for years without knowing why. Elia sat beside her crib and began to hum. The lullaby wasn't just a song, it was a thread, a lifeline to a girl in a summer field, to a sister by a willow tree, to a child whose name had never been called. The baby blinked slowly, her lips parted in a sigh, her eyelids fluttered closed, and somewhere in the hush between hums, Elia felt the world change shape, a rustle of cloth, a breath like wind. Then, that's the one I used to hum. Elia turned. There, standing at the nursery door, hair longer, eyes older, face drawn by time but lit with something eternal, was Lila. Her hands trembled, her shoulders curved inward, unsure, but she was real, solid, breathing. Here, Elia didn't rise, she couldn't. She could only sit, heart full and breaking, as Lila stepped closer, her eyes wide with wonder, her voice cracked with memory. I tried to find her. I thought I was losing my mind. Every time I saw a baby, I listened. Every time I heard a song like that, I followed it. Her fingers hovered just above the crib's edge, and then one day, I heard it from the sidewalk, through the glass. Elia whispered, barely breathing, "You came back." Lila nodded, and a tear slipped down her cheek. I wasn't gone. I was just trying to remember. They stood in the half-light, Elia and Lila, the child between them breathing slow, content. No one spoke. The world didn't ask for an explanation. Outside, the rain had stopped. Inside, a lullaby hung in the air like mist, soft, golden, familiar. Love, Elia thought, forgets many things, but not the sound of its own name. She looked down at the baby, not Mira's, not Elia's, Lila's. The child stirred and cooed, as if she had always known, and in that room full of silence and lullabies, a family remembered its shape. Lila's voice came slowly, shaped like something once frozen and now thawing, drop by drop. They told me she didn't cry. They said she came too early, that she didn't live long enough to name. She sat beside the window in the quiet room, the sky behind her gray and silver, rain tracing invisible lines across the glass. Her hands trembled in her lap, not from cold but memory. I believed them, she whispered, or maybe I just couldn't bear not to. She looked down at her shoes, worn, muddied, tied too tight, as though they were the only things still keeping her in place. I walked out of the hospital without telling anyone. I remember that. Her voice floated like smoke, curling through the hush. I kept thinking, she must still be somewhere, that maybe they got it wrong. But when no one answered, and no one searched, I started to forget. Elia didn't interrupt. She only listened, as if each word was a fragile thing being unfolded carefully from a drawer too long sealed shut. There were years I didn't know who I was. Lila said, I lived in towns I don't remember. I forgot how to count days, but I never forgot the weight of her. even though I only held her once. She looked up. Is that possible? To remember something you barely touched? Elia nodded. She didn't need to speak. Some truths answer themselves. I started hearing a song, Lila said. Not with my ears. In dreams. A woman's voice, humming. The same one I used to sing. She looked out the window again. And then one night I saw a green gate. Rusted hinges. Someone calling from the other side. I couldn't see their face. But the name. She swallowed. They were calling my name. She closed her eyes. So I came back, not knowing why, not hoping, just following something that remembered me. Elia sat across from her, still, gentle, not judging, not rushing, not trying to fix what didn't need mending. Her hands rested quietly on her lap, palms open, as though catching the last rain of a long season. When Lila wept, she did not reach for a tissue. She let her cry, like she had always needed to. In the hallway, the baby stirred. Neither of them moved. The moment needed no answers, only room. The next day arrived like silk, pale blue, damp with soft clouds and the scent of mint from the garden. In the stillness of the early hour, Elia brought the child to Lila. They did not speak at first. The baby, wide-eyed and wrapped in warmth, blinked once, then again, and curled her fingers around Lila's thumb like a promise finally kept. She needs a name, Elia said. Lila nodded, then smiled, soft, watery, full. Amira, she whispered. It means princess, but also truth. Elia brushed the baby's hair. It's what she's always been. Mira came at sunset. The golden hours scattered through the windows, lighting her features like something painted by memory. She stood beside Amira's crib, not afraid, not confused, only quiet. She lifted the child into her arms, just once, held her close, kissed her hair, and then placed her gently into Lila's arms. I think I was meant to carry her through the in-between, she said, but she was never mine to keep. Elia placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. You loved her, that's enough. Mira smiled and left with grace, her steps lighter than when she arrived. The room filled with the hush of something sacred. Elia sat. Lila sat beside her. Between them, Amira slept, one fist curled beneath her chin. One sister cradled her. The other smoothed a strand of hair from the baby's brow. There was no need to speak. Everything that had been lost had returned, not as it was, but as it was meant to be. A lullaby hung in the space between them. One without words, made only of glances and breath, and long-delayed peace. Outside, the rain began again. Not hard, not urgent, just soft silver falling. Steady, warm, slow, like a blessing spoken through sky. The kind of rain that doesn't wash things away. The kind that settles, soothes, stays. Elia watched it through the pain. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for something to return. She was holding it. She thought of all the moments that had led here, of the mistake that wasn't, of the loss that had become a path, of a child called stillborn, who had never truly left. Maybe, she whispered, she wasn't lost. Lila looked at her. Maybe she was always meant to find her way like this. Later, in the hallway, a nurse asked Elia gently, did they ever sort out the paperwork? That strange mix-up in the maternity files. Elia didn't look up from her tea. She only smiled, the kind of smile that knows, that forgives, that needs no explanation. And as the sky darkened, and the baby slept, and the sisters sat in the quiet room once more, the world spun gently forward, soft, slow, whole. The hospital garden lay beneath a canopy of silver stars, the air scented with mint and late-blooming jasmine. A soft breeze stirred the night leaves, and moonlight pooled gently in the petals of rain-damp roses. The world had fallen into its softer rhythm, not silence, exactly, but stillness, the kind that holds its breath in reverence. Elia stepped along the cobbled path, her shoes barely making a sound. Her shoulders were curved with tenderness, not weariness, for on them rested something irreplaceable. Above her the wind chimes whispered, thin, glassy notes drifting across the darkness, like echoes of something only hearts remember. They didn't ring brightly. They sighed, Each sound was a thread pulled gently from time, reminders of lullabies, laughter, footsteps once lost and now returned. The notes weren't loud, they didn't need to be. They were simply there, waiting, like everything else in this place. Amira breathed slow against Elia's shoulder, her tiny fingers curled into the fabric of her nurse's gown, a hold without tension, a grip made of peace. Her breath rose and fell in a rhythm Elia knew by heart, not one she taught, but one she remembered, from arms that once ached to hold this weight, from dreams that whispered of a second chance, though they came in silence and never called her name. Now there was no need for names, only presence, only love. As Elia reached the far end of the garden, a low wooden gate came into view, its hinges weathered, its paint chipped by time and wind. It creaked, yes, but not in warning. It creaked like a memory, opening not for the first time, but for the right time, like a door that had waited, always, to welcome her through. And she stepped into that space not as a nurse, or even as a sister, but as something quieter, a witness to the truth love keeps. From the upstairs window, half-lit, curtains fluttering, a voice began to hum, not loud, not clear, not even meant to be heard. But Elia felt it, in the soft pulse of her ribs, in the hush of the garden air, in the place where memory lives without asking for proof. It was the same song she once sang alone, now sung again, from another room, another life, and Elia knew who it was. Lila didn't need to be seen to be real. Elia closed her eyes. She stood still under the stars, the breeze wrapped around her like an old shawl, carrying scents of linen and lavender, of rain and time and something long forgiven. She didn't speak, she simply smiled, the kind of smile you don't share, but carry, the kind that speaks not to people, but to the sky. A smile shaped from healing, from memory, from stars that never once stopped shining, only waited to be looked at again. In a world where things go missing, where babies are misplaced, and sisters are forgotten, and lullabies fall quiet in dusty rooms, love still knows the way. It stumbles, it hides, it leaves its name behind, but always, always, it returns, sometimes through blood, sometimes through strangers, sometimes through the long corridor of years, and sometimes through a baby asleep on your shoulder, a wind chime in the night, a song in the upstairs window, and a gate that opens like forgiveness. Elia kissed Amira's temple. The baby stirred, and the stars listened. The world turned softly on.